Sam Wilson's Captain America's MCU run has been catastrophically awful thus far, with very little signs of recovery down the road. If you look at his only two outings out as Captain America, that includes, of course, Falcon and Winter Soldier, a poorly received TV show which really buried the character of not just Falcon, but Bucky as well. And then his other outing as Captain America is Captain America Brave New World, which again flopped at the box office and had middling reviews at best, which is a big problem for a character that's trying to live up to the name of, again, Captain America, one of the most beloved characters in the MCU and one of the biggest box office draws in the entirety of the MCU and Marvel Comics in general. So ultimately speaking, he's failed to get out of the shadow of good old Chris Evans, Captain America, Steve Rogers. And on top of that, he's failed to get even out of the shadow of a different character, one of Chris Evans and Steve Rogers' side characters, more specifically Bucky Barnes. Now, the major issue with Bucky Barnes is that Bucky Barnes has been basically touted as a much better character altogether. There's a reason why a bunch of his fans and a bunch of fans of Marvel in general are trying to talk about how good old Bucky is much more deserving of not just the shield, but of the title of Captain America in general. And the thing is, this is the unfortunate part. They're actually correct. Bucky is far more deserving of the shield and of the title of Captain America. And this is entirely Marvel's own fault. And this is also where they start to go wrong, where people start to miss something major about these characters because they can understand again in their heads that Bucky is more deserving. But the question that people should be asking is why is he more deserving? And how can we make Sam Wilson reach a similar status? Welcome back, Tiger Pack. It's your boy Black Tiger Talks back with another video. And in this video, I want to talk about again the reasons why Sam is still not worthy of the shield and why, more importantly, good old Bucky actually is. So this isn't my first video talking about the failures of Falcon when it comes to his character, when it comes to making him a main character, let alone a main A-list type of character. But it basically all boiled down to is the idea of he is a side character. This is the idea that a lot of people have started to talk about, ultimately speaking, that when you look at Sam Wilson and his abilities, his powers, his backstory, even when it comes to his side characters, relationship side characters, main villains, so on and so forth, main love interest, he doesn't really have a lot of these things because again, he was built as a side character first, and as a main character, they're trying to retrofit this side character into a main character. And that's one of the major issues. Again, look at all those type of elements. If you boil it down to three elements, relationships, which include villain, main best friends and so on and so forth, love interests, all those things. When you look at the powers and abilities, when you look at the backstory, all these things fall apart. His backstory is nothing. He just had an experimental wingsuit. That's not really that great of a backstory. He just was kind of given that. Now his wingman did get shot down, which gives him some trauma, but we really never even got to really see that. Get this. Basically, he told us that this happened. So you don't get to see it actually happen. You don't, it's not really that big of a backstory. It doesn't really give you an ethos, an idea of what he is actually like by the backstory alone. In comparison to someone like Captain America, we all know his backstory is absolutely epic. People like Peter Parker, a backstory is one of the biggest parts of the mini character, honestly, let alone a main character. And again, we let him get away with this lackluster backstory because he was a side character, but as a main character, he needs a whole lot more. And then, of course, keep going on. Look at his powers and abilities. The wingsuit thing, the experimental wingsuit. Yes, he's done some things on it. Yes, he has the drones, the red wing drones that are now around, and he's using those as well. He's the vibranium suit now, but at the same time, none of these things are really good main character punchy type powers. That's what most main characters get. That's what most main characters deserve. Look at characters like, the Yuji Chidori, I think his name is, from Jujutsu Kaisen. He's a punchy based power. Same for someone like Midoriya inside of, the My Hero Academia show. You look at most of these characters, they have punchy like powers, for a reason because they're simple and well easy for most characters to kind of understand what they do. So yeah, he needed a regular kind of punchy type power. He doesn't have that. Now you could retrofit and make him have a more power that's more similar to that. You can do things to his power to make it better, but you still have to build up, not from scratch. You have a little bit of a base, but you have to build up a little bit more. And then on top of that, of top of not having powers and abilities, on top of not having a good backstory, he doesn't have any good relationships. He has no major side characters that you can really talk about because again, he himself is a side character. He doesn't have a main villain or villains in general that you can really point to and say he has a relationship with those guys at all. And he doesn't even have a love interest. He has nothing when it comes all down to it. And that's really a bad thing for him. Meanwhile, if you look at someone like Bucky, Bucky has every one of those things for the most part. Not only does he have a epic backstory, because again, Bucky is a side character that was retrofitted into a main villain. The work of retrofitting him into a villain, which automatically makes him having main character type status, the ability to be a main character, that automatically makes him so much better. His backstory of being, already fighting versus Hydra in World War One, being Captain America's best friend, getting, left for dead, assumed to be dead, and getting retrofitted with the super soldier serum and a metal arm and being turned into this, Hydra assassin for all these years. That's already a great backstory, breaking through the programming, all that stuff. Great character arcs, great backstory, already put into his character from the get go. So you give him this epic backstory, but on top of that, you give him some solid powers and abilities that make sense for a main character. He's a super soldier serum like Captain America, which is very important. But like I always say, if you're gonna succeed someone else, you're gonna be their successor. You have to bring something new. What does he bring new? He brings a metal arm. Metal arm is so cool, so epic. We see it's now it's made out of vibranium. We can see that within the other shows, not just shows, but other media when it comes to Marvel Rivals, when it comes to even the Marvel's Avengers game. You can do things to make the arm get upgraded to do different things, make it more powerful, so on and so forth. There are ways to make that arm even better. Everyone knows how to make a metal arm as cool as humanly possible. So it's a very understandable and interesting power that, of course, can be upgraded much more easily than Sam's wingsuit. And then on top of all of these things, you might say, well, he doesn't have a good relationship with the different characters around him. And that's just simply not as big of a deal because the fact his backstory explains all that because he's a World War II, sorry, era soldier who's been thought out from time to time as a assassin. It makes sense he doesn't have any relationships with anybody around him. So ultimately speaking, you're talking about the same weakness of Sam actually works for him. So yeah, altogether, he's just a better main character to work with in comparison to Falcon. And that's what most people talk about. So most people kind of stop their argument right then and there. And that's not a bad place to stop the argument, but I think it kind of misses the point of what could have been done to resolve these things, as well as one of the biggest factors that, again, no one ever truly talks about. The cool factor, it's one of the elements that no one ever talks about, how Bucky was not just had this great backstory, he didn't just have these good powers, he didn't just have these good relationships with different, characters as far as, even I didn't mention this in the section before, but if you look at someone like, again, with Hydra, he has a relationship with Hydra as a former Hydra agent. There is a whole bunch of narrative meat you could use when it comes to his relationship with the villains of Hydra. But on top of having all these things, Bucky was actually pushed front and center for years, unlike Sam. Sam has been relegated to the background. He's been a solid side character. In fact, he's been a great side character for quite some time, but he's remained in the not in the shadows, but in the shadow of Captain America as any good side character basically should be. He hasn't been really pushed as a major character throughout his entire history. Meanwhile, Bucky actually has been. In his first movie, he plays a major role within, Captain America's backstory, providing a major core wound. His seeming, death at the hands of Hydra is a major wound within Captain America to start with. So you already start out with a big thing from that alone. Then you turn him into the Winter Soldier. He's the main antagonist, at the very least, the main obstacle, the main physical antagonist of Captain America in that movie, which is a major cool factor. He has a great look, he has a great, menacing, all that type of things are really considered when you talk about a character like him. That's perfect. That's even more focus on that character. That emotional core of the entire movie is a rest on that. I mean, the movie literally has his name, Winter Soldier, in the title. So he's front and center featured in that situation. And then you go on to Civil War. again, front and center, featured. He is the main, not necessarily the main antagonist, but he is one of the main elements of the story. The story does not work without Bucky being there. Now, Sam is there too in both of the last two movies, Winter Soldier and inside of Civil War, but he's still a much more of a side character within those situations. The same thing goes for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, more Infinity War than Endgame. Bucky's just featured front and center. Sam is relegated to the background. And again, this is a major problem for a side character, but it is a major problem if you plan on making that side character, Sam Wilson, Captain America. There's all this narrative weight running behind Bucky, which is why when the choice becomes between him and Sam, people are going to choose Bucky. Obviously speaking, because Bucky actually deserves it because of all the narrative weight through three movies that are basically moving right behind Bucky. They're propelling him to the top. It just makes sense since this man has completely gone from being a World War II soldier, best friend of Captain America, to being, controlled by Hydra, getting this metal arm, getting his arm ripped off from him, and getting this metal arm now, to, breaking free of all the programming that Hydra put into him. It just makes sense for him to step into the role of Captain America. It feels like a setup and a payoff. And again, for Sam never had that. He never had this setup for him even becoming Captain America in the first place, which honestly is the final and major element that makes Marvel out to be pretty stupid for not thinking about this beforehand. And that third element is the fact that Marvel should have understood this. They should have understood this completely when it comes to making good old Sam the new Captain America. This was an element that they kind of did know about. That's why Bucky was there in the first place. They all knew that Bucky deserved the shield, but they decided to give it to Sam regardless, which again is a pretty bad choice altogether. We just talked about the narrative weight behind it, but there's also a major element that no one's talking about. The thing is, it's not just that Bucky is built up so high, it's that Sam has done nothing. Think about this real quick. When you look at someone like Winter Soldier, you look at someone like Bucky. I just talked about the narrative things he did throughout those movies. We didn't even talk about the cool stuff he did throughout the movies. It's just straight up epic, awesome stuff that a character like him has done throughout those movies. He's featured majorly in almost all the best fight scenes in the MCU, period. Think about that real quick. You got his epic moment where he comes in as Winter Soldier and defeats Nick Fury, the whole Nick Fury chase scene in Winter Soldier. Then you go to the highway battle where he does that epic knife flip, the whole Who's Bucky scene. That whole scene is absolutely epic. One of the best scenes in the MCU, and he's the main antagonist in that scene. You have the emotional end of Winter Soldier, where he is, fighting, Captain America again on the helicarrier bridge. Epic stuff. Then you go to Civil War and you keep going. You have the whole scene of him and Captain America taking on the police, then Black Panther coming in, and we have a first fight between Black Panther, Winter Soldier. Absolutely epic stuff. Again, it featured very heavily in that three-way epic battle. And then you keep going on. You have this breakout scene right after that. We breaks out from the I think the UN's control, and he beats up Iron Man. He takes on Black Widow, and he takes on Sharon Carter, and then he takes on T'Challa in street clothes. Epic stuff again. And then you finally put it all together in that final epic fight scene of him and Captain America versus Iron Man. Epic stuff. Again, all this stuff is building up to what he is going to become. Him being Captain America feels like a done deal at this point in time because he's done so many epic things. Meanwhile, look at Sam. Sam has done nothing epic throughout his entire tenure. You can't point to a single cool epic moment that Sam did throughout the entirety of his appearances as Falcon. Literally not one. The best fight scene that he was involved in, like actually prominently involved in as a side character, was his fight scene versus Ant-Man inside the Ant-Man movie, in a movie that very few people watched. Again, a good movie, actually. I'm not trying to bash that movie. It's a great movie. But it's a movie that most people didn't simply watch. It only made like 400 million at the box office. And in that fight scene, he lost. He lost to a joke character like Ant-Man. Of course, he's not going to be taken seriously as Captain America. He's done nothing. But here's the part that, again, most people, even in that situation, can miss. The part that I initially missed when I was thinking about it myself. And that element is that Marvel knew all of this. This is all in Marvel's head as they're making Endgame, which means that again, and in Endgame, they know this is not like some type of spur of the moment thing. They know they shot the scene, they had it, planned for years, that Sam Wilson is going to be Captain America, which means that They should have made the argument within the movie of why Sam needed to be Captain America. Of course, they should have made this argument in previous movies, within Winter Soldier, within Civil War. They should have given him some actual big time moments within those things, the moments where he does something actually cool and epic. Moments that aren't just for side characters, but moments that actually make him prominently featured. Those should have been made in those movies for certain. But Endgame is your final attempt basically to make him that guy, to make him deserving of the shield. And they failed at that. You can't think of a single moment in Endgame that was Sam focused. Only moment that most people start to point towards is the whole, on your left moment. But that doesn't even really count when you think about it because that moment is immediately overshadowed by people like Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and Black Panther. So even the whole moment of on your left, even that's overshadowed. He has no major moments in that final battle that make you say, oh, he's that guy. He deserves the shield. Nothing. And the thing is, it's so easy to add that moment in there if you really wanted to. Again, I made a whole video about this. One of my previous videos talking about how Endgame failed to set up future characters. And that's one of the characters they really failed on doing. If you're going to make Sam the next big guy, he's going to be Captain America. He's supposed to be the new face of the MCU of the next phase and so on and so forth. You had to push him in that movie. And again, I'm not saying you to make him not get dusted in the first place. Again, he got dusted. That is what it is. On your left is a great moment. We gotta keep that in there. And in that final battle, you could have given him a moment. You gave Captain Marvel a moment. You gave her two moments, actually. The whole rain of fire thing where she comes down and destroys the entire ship. You gave her the moment where she goes over and, wrestles with Thanos and he headbutts her and she doesn't even move. You gave her two moments. Those moments were not deserved for her at all. There's a whole different other story with her. I'll talk about that in a different video. But ultimately speaking, she had two major moments in that movie you gave her. You gave Scarlet Witch a major moment. You gave Captain America himself a major moment. Even the whole woman, girls get it done scene with Captain Marvel flying through there. That's 3 moments for her, I guess, now. But Sam didn't get a moment. You could have given him an easy moment, honestly. You could have made him take on good old Thanos himself. He could have fought Thanos one-on-one or even with Captain America. You'd have a moment where Captain America throws his shield and Thanos deflects it and it gets in Sam's hand and Sam hits Thanos with the shield, You could have had a moment like that to make him out to be the next guy that gives some setup to him being the next Captain America, but they didn't. They gave him nothing throughout the entirety of the movie. And now they're surprised that when, of course, at the end of the movie, they suddenly just thrust the shield into his hands, that no one respects it. Of course, no one respects it. You didn't give him the chance to respect it in the first place. You made him out to be a side character fully and completely. And then on top of that, the character that was already well positioned for that moment, someone like Bucky, who had done all the work, who had been prominently featured in some of the best fight scenes in the MCU, the guy who should, and by every single metric, be the next big guy, be the Captain America, the guy who's earned it, you take it away from him. Of course, people are going to be talking about why Bucky deserved to be Captain America because, quite frankly, he did. And it's all essentially Marvel's fault. All they had to do is give Sam some moments, to give him something to work with, but they didn't. And in the end, Bucky deserves a shield, and Sam simply doesn't. But that's just my opinion on it. Leave your opinion down below. Like the video, subscribe, share the video, all that different YouTube jazz. And with that out the way, I'll cut it here and stop rambling. Until next time, stay ferocious, Tiger Pack.